Hello, it's been a while. I hope this finds you well. Anyway, Discord question. Could I reproduce this? I think it's a game stinger. It says advantages in German within Davinci Resolve, so I had to go. I don't think I did too bad a job, really. Anyway, let's see how we did it. Okay, so you're on the edit page. The first thing you need is your Fusion composition. It will either be in the effects library, so make sure your effects library is turned on, go to effects, and it's here at the top. If you've watched my videos before and as you've been told, you'd have put a little star there, and it's also down in the favorites bar down here, which is where mine lives. So bring your Fusion comp onto your timeline. Now we need to make it whatever length we want it. The original, I think, was pretty much, well, what, 37 frames on a 60 frame per second timeline, so less than half a second, or just over half a second, sorry. So as I'm going to replicate this as closely as possible, I'm going to use the original movie as a guide and just drop my Fusion comp so it's the right length. So we can now get rid of our guide. From there, put your playhead over the Fusion composition and go into Fusion. In lovely Fusion, move your media out of the way. Right, first thing I did was I brought in the example just so that I could look at it, see what was happening, and can sort of compare it. Let's say it's 37 frames long. It doesn't take long to sort of skip through it. And if you skip through, you can see there's various things going on. So you've got your main text, which jiggles at the bottom here, and it slightly changes size. You've also got your crosses that rotate. A few crosses kind of appear dotted around the place. You've got your outline text that appears and changes color. You've got some more up here. And then you've got a few of these lines that appear and disappear. So we'll tackle each element one at a time. So we'll start off with the main text. So bring in a text node. We put our text node into the other viewer so we can see what's happening. And we'll type in whatever. I will stick, as I say, I'm going to replicate this as closely as I can. The purpose of the tutorial isn't to replicate this particular stinger, but rather to look at some of the techniques used. We've got our text. We're going to make it roughly the right size. Now what you notice is that this is quite a fat font. I'm sure I've probably got something very similar somewhere, but the closest I used was a font called Rubik. And if you set it to black, it gives quite a nice chunky kind of look. Adjust the size till you're happy with it. So the first thing to do is to get this jiggling effect going on and the sort of slight change in size. So to get the text to split, I'm going to bring in a transform node. I'm going to pipe the text into the transform node, and then I'm going to apply a mask, a rectangle, to the transform node, like so. Now if we view our transform node, if we make any changes in the transform, all it will affect is whatever area is within your mask. So if we make our mask 1 wide and then drop it down so that it sits at the halfway point on the screen, so you want a Y value of 0.25. So now you can see our mask edge is here. So anything below this line will be affected by the transform. So if we now select our transform and move the X, you get this effect going on. And that's what we want. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can go through frame by frame and you can keyframe that movement. So you would say at frame 0, you can keyframe it, go to frame 1, offset it slightly. Maybe go to frame 2, keyframe it so that that holds, come back to frame 3, and then knock this back to 0.5. What that does is it gives you that sort of jiggled offset thing going on. And that's fine, you can work through. It's 37 frames, you can do it all by hand, you can just move it about if you want. The way I did it was I used a modifier and did it automatically. So if you double click on center to get rid of any keyframes. Now if you come to the center, right click, go to modify with and choose XY path. When you do that, you see that your modifiers button lights up. If you click on your modifiers button, you can see you've got X and Y, and now you can manipulate them independently. What we want to do is manipulate the X axis. We don't need to worry about Y, so double click it just to cancel everything on it. Double click X to cancel the keyframes that are on that already. Now if you right click on the X, go to modify with and shake. What this is going to do is it's going to automatically shake your X value. Now as you can see, the default settings are somewhat extreme and we don't want them that extreme. So to come back to something closer to what we want, you're going to come down to the bottom where it says shake on transform 1. You're going to set the minimum value to 0.475 and you're going to set the maximum value to 0.525. So now you'll get the movement between those 2 points, and you can see it offsets it and jiggles it a little bit. At the minute that's running a bit slow, so what you do is you come to the smoothness and you drop it down and play with this to get it kind of as quick or as slow as you want it. If you feel that that movement is too much, you can always change these values so that they're closer together. But that gives you that sideways motion. The other thing is that you get a slight change in size. So to get the change in size, we're going to add another transform. The reason being that we want to change the size of the whole word. If we use the same transform, it's masked, so we would only change the size of the bottom half. So pipe this into a transform, into a second transform, view it. Now in transform 2, come to size, right click, modify with and shake again. Now go to your modifiers tab, leave the maximum at 1 and bring the minimum to 0.8, 0.9-ish. Play with it, see what looks good. We'll try 0.8 first. And again, drop your softness down so you get quite a jagged movement. So that looks okay. So that basically covers the main text. So what we need to do now is start to build this into our stinger. So we need this against a background. So I'm going to bring in the background node. I'm going to pipe this background in to my media out. The media out is what takes everything back to the timeline. So whatever's in the media out is what appears on the timeline. If we now take our output from our second transform and just drop it onto the output of the background, this will automatically create a merge node and our first element is in place. So next we're going to look at our outline text, and what we can do is make a copy of our main text. Select your text, Control C to copy, click away, Control V to paste. If we bring this text and drop it onto our main path, you can now see we've got 2 lots of text overlapping. Select our new text, go to shading, appearance, and make it an outline. We want to drop the width of that line, so come to thickness and drop it to 0.01. And then we need to drop the size a little and position it kind of where we want it. And you need to jiggle around between size and position to sort of get the text roughly where you want it. So somewhere around there should do it. So now we need to work out when we can and can't see our text. So if you watch the left hand window as I step through, so our text appears at the second frame. So select your text, come to the shading tab, and you've got opacity. We're going to keyframe the opacity and keyframe it manually so that our text appears and disappears. So at frame 0 we can't see our text, so we can set a keyframe on opacity and drop it to 0. At frame 1 our text appears, so we can bring our opacity up and that automatically sets a keyframe. Your text stays visible then until frame 5. So come back to frame 4, set a keyframe on opacity so that the value stays, go to frame 5 and drop it to 0. Keep stepping through, it's reappeared at frame 7, so come back to frame 6, set a keyframe forward to 7 and make it appear. Step through again, it disappears at 11, so back to 10, set a keyframe, go to 11 and drop the opacity to 0. Back again at 13, so we need a keyframe on 12 to hold the 0. Go to 13, keyframe up, and then it disappears at 15. So at 14, set a keyframe, go to 15 and drop it down. And then I think that's it. It doesn't appear again after that. So that gets our text on and off at the appropriate times. But what we need to do now is look at the color. So again, come back to frame 0, still on the shading tab, come to the color section, set a keyframe, and the first color is this kind of dark red, so we can set that up. Now, if you look down the bottom, you've got value. If you double click value to select everything that's in there, right click and then copy, that will copy that value so that we can put it back in later on. So again, we're stepping through our animation and looking for changes. So it changes from red to white at frame 2 and 3. So at frame 2, set a keyframe on color, go forward 1 frame, change it to white. Step through. Now when it comes back in at 7, it's already red, so go back to frame 6, set a keyframe so that the white has stayed up until that point, make it red, double click and then paste your value, and that will set it to the right color. Again, step forward, so it's gone from red to white at 8 and 9. So at frame 8, keyframe to hold the color, step forward to 9 and make it white, and again step through, keeping an eye on your reference. So frame 12, it's white, frame 13, it's dark red, and then we're done. So that's your bottom text. So now you can see this going on here. So the next elements to look at are your little plus signs that are dotted around. Now there may be a more elegant way of doing this, but I'm just going to go for the easy way. You can make a plus sign, you can use shape nodes, you can use masks, or you can cheat and just type a plus sign. So if you bring a text node in your text input box, type plus, and you end up with a plus sign. And we can make a plus sign bigger, and we can use the color picker. So click and hold and drag and get your color. And then you can position them. So if you come back to frame 0, you can grab the doohickey in either window and it reflects in the other window. So just as a point of reference, we'll grab it in our example. If you come over and position it, doesn't have to be exact, but somewhere around about where you want it. Now again, you can change the font or change the weight. We make it extra bold, you get pretty much the same sort of size. You can bring it up a bit if you want, but don't be too mad. So now if we step through, you can see our little thing animates across the length of our composition. And it actually goes through half a circle or 180 degrees, so we can get our own cross to do the same. To do that, come to layout, come to the rotation, and we're going to rotate around the z-axis. So come to frame 0, keyframe, come to the last frame and type 180. Through the length of the clip, our little cross will rotate, but what you notice is it's not a smooth rotation. It starts quickly and then slows down. So to get our hours to do that, with your text selected, come to the top of the screen and just click on where it says spline. And this opens our spline editor, hopefully with our text already selected. If you check the text, you can see the curve. This little double-headed arrow will zoom to fit, so you can see both keyframes. If you just click and drag and select both keyframes, what you see is you get handles appear, which you can then manipulate. And you want to produce a curve that looks something like this. And what that will do, our rotation will start quickly and then slow down as it gets towards the end, like so. So that's one side. To do the other side, select your text, Control C to copy, click away, Control V to paste. And now you can just merge the two together, like so. Select the second cross, and again, grab the doohickey in the middle and just move it to where you want it. Now, if you view, you can see both. Now, the problem we've got is they're both going in the same direction, but in the example, they actually go in opposite directions. So select the text that represents this plus sign, come to layout, go to the last keyframe and change 180 to -180. Now what this is going to do is mess up your spline for this text. So we need to open it up, open the spline editor and just sort that out. And what we'll do is we'll select both keyframes, hit Control L just to make them linear again, and then you're going to make the opposite curve. So you're going to make it kind of this way around. Doesn't matter if they're both exactly the same or not, just as long as they're roughly doing the same thing. So now if you watch our two plus signs, you can see they start fast and slow down and they're going in opposite directions. Okay, so we've got our first two plus signs. Now if we look at our guide, as you step through, you'll notice, let's step through from the beginning, you'll notice little plus signs dotted around. So here, 3 down here, 1 up here, there's another one down here. So we'll do those next. I'll do the first one, show you what I'm doing, and then I'm going to whiz through the others just to sort of make the video a bit shorter. So we'll do the 3 plus signs first. So let's find them. So that's here. So much like these, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to use the text node. So bring in your text node, 3 plus signs, color, use your color picker, get your color, and we will pipe that into our main flow so we can see what we're doing. You can see the 3 plus signs are in the middle here and we want them down here. So again, if you move either control point, it's reflected in the other. So you can move your control point to roughly position it where you want it. And away you go. Again, with your text node, you can change your font weight and stuff, play around, get the look you want. You can mess with the tracking if you want to space them out a bit. And then you just need to keyframe, come to shading and keyframe opacity to turn them on and off. So stepping through, we can see our 3 plus signs appear at frame 5. So on frame 5, set a keyframe on opacity, go back 1 frame, drop opacity to 0, come forward, keep stepping through until they disappear. So they've disappeared at frame 10 to 11. So go to frame 10, add a keyframe, go to 11 and drop opacity to 0 to turn them off. And it's the same principle for the odd ones. So I'll do those quickly and then come back. Okay, so once you've got them positioned and animated, we're just going to simply merge all together. So bring the output from one onto the other, output from the merge onto the next, etc. And this will put them into our main pipe, which if we now view, we should have various bits pop in and out. Cool. Okay, so next we're going to do these red lines that appear at various points. Now we're going to do all the red lines in one paint node. But to do that, you need to follow what I'm doing exactly. So what I'll do is I'll do the first couple and then I will again whiz through stuff. So first off, bring in a background node and make it transparent. Next, bring in your paint node. Connect the output of the background onto the yellow input of the paint node. And then we can merge our paint node onto our main flow so we can see what we're doing, like so. So first off, we've got this red line here, which is at frame 0. So we're going to select our paint node. We're going to come to brush controls. We're going to drop the softness all the way down. And we're going to drop the size down maybe till about 0.015-ish, somewhere around there. And we're going to select a color. Now you can either color pick it, if you can get the right one, somewhere around there, or you can just set whichever color you want. Okay, to draw your line, you're going to need to move around in your viewer. Now, if you press and hold the middle mouse button, you can scroll around, or you can pan around the viewer. If you hold the control key and scroll the middle mouse button, you can zoom in and out. So to draw the lines, come to the top of the viewer to all the icons and you're looking for the polyline icon. Click that. Your cursor will change to a plus sign. Zoom in a bit. Come to the start of your line. Click to place your first point. Hold your middle mouse button to move over. Come to the end of your line and hold the shift key and then click. And this will keep your line horizontal. Now, looking at our example, that's way too thick. So come to size and just bring it down 005 maybe. Play around, get a line that you like. About 005 works. Okay, so next we need to make the line appear and disappear. To do that, come to stroke controls. And you've got right on frame 0, set a keyframe, step through until our example line disappears. So there, go back to the last frame that it's visible on, set a keyframe, forward 1 frame, and drop it to make your line disappear. Now if we zoom out again, we can see we've already got another line here. So this is our next line. Now to start your next line, you need to click on the polyline icon again. That will disable this line and let you start a fresh line. Otherwise it just continues this line, which then gets all messy. So click your polyline, zoom in a bit, point at the start of the line, hold the shift key, point at the end of the line. And that should be reflected in our comp. And again, we need to do the animation bit. So you're using right on, set a keyframe where it's visible, go back 1 frame and it disappears, so you can drop your right onto 0 and then step through until the line disappears at the other end. So there. So keyframe on the last frame it's visible, step forward and make it invisible. And again, if we come back full screen, we can see we've got 2 more lines here. So we'll do exactly the same process for each line. Click the polyline tool to reset, draw your line, do your animation, click to set your polyline, draw your line, do your animation, rinse and repeat until we've gone all the way through. All right, I'll be back in a minute. There you go, you've got all your lines in the one paint node. Should you need to make any adjustments, if you select your paint node and come to modifiers, you've got loads of polyline strokes or polystrokes in the modifiers. Each one of these polyline strokes corresponds to one of your lines, but hopefully you won't need to. Okay, so we've got everything apart from this text at the top here, and this was a bit of a nightmare to sort out, if I'm honest. I tried various displacements and stuff and it just wasn't working, so I ended up masking and transforming text nodes. So if we come back to here, this is the first bit, and it's basically written the word kind of almost in a sort of continuous ribbon across the top, I suppose. So what I did, actually I won't bring in a text node, I'm going to copy my original text node just because it's got all the formatting in it already. So Control C, Control V to paste, change the text like so. Now if we view this, we need to make it an outline, we need to drop the width, and now we can move that up so it's in position. We can jiggle the size of it if we want to maybe drop it down a bit so that it all fits in the screen, like so. First bit is this kind of line across the middle. That's fairly straightforward. We can just take a background node, merge our text onto it, and then apply a mask. The way merge nodes work, whatever's on the background goes into the yellow input, whatever's on the foreground goes into the green input. So we've got the text on top of a transparent background. The mask only affects whatever's coming in to the green input. So we can now view that merge node and position our mask now. At the minute the mask is the wrong way round, so if you come to your mask, your rectangle, check invert, and now you can see we're getting somewhere like this black line. So we need to position it down a bit, maybe drop the width down, maybe soften it. Again, this is all kind of personal taste stuff. You need to play around with it to get the kind of look that you're after. So that's going to put this line across. This was a mess. I ended up bringing in a copy of our text node, again merge it on so that we can do stuff with this text now. And I just made it so that it was the original text. And I masked the original text so that I've just got the VOR and a bit of the T, I think. I can't remember what I did. VOR maybe. Again, you're going to need to fiddle around with this to get the kind of look that you're after. So you can see them overlapping here. And this is really quite difficult to see. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drop the opacity on that for a minute so I can see what I'm doing here. Didn't mean to do that. So I'd like to show you a nice definitive way of doing this, but I'll be honest with you, I haven't got one. It was very much fiddling about, trying to get the look. Drop it down to just those three letters, the VOR. I think what I ended up doing was actually adding another mask here. So with this mask selected, if you click rectangle again, and then I positioned it kind of over this bit of the main text. So you've got your original mask here that does the line across the middle. You've then got this second mask in the chain. This second mask needs to be set to subtract, and it's basically cutting out this portion of the text. You need to balance it so that you've got something funky going on in the middle, but you can just start to make out the letters, I guess. It's going to be playing around getting the size and shape that fits, but that kind of worked. And then what we now find, just to compound things, is if you go forward a couple of frames, it changes again. So to get that change, what I did was I set up a second text node. As I say, I'm sure there's an easier way of doing this, but for the life of me, I'm not sure how. I'm sure I'll post this video and look at it in a couple of days' time and go, oh yeah, Simon, you could have done whatever. If I do, I'll let you know. But anyway, so this I set up as a separate text. Again, we want it as an outline. We can sort of jiggle the size and what have you to get it somewhere near where we want it. Maybe something like that. Just temporarily, if you merge it over, you can then have a look at it in position. Like so. Now, I didn't quite go as crazy as, well, I did actually. We need to break this up, and the easiest way I've found to break it up is if you select your text node, hit transform. This will put a transform node in, which you can then mask, much as we did earlier. You can bring this mask in. You can select this mask. So I'm going to basically offset a line in the middle here. So bring your mask to roughly where you want it. If you drop the width, or drop the height, sorry, increase the width all the way across. Now with this transform, we can just offset this part of it. I then added another transform and did a similar thing. Mask. This mask I did in this kind of top corner area. Just to mess about with these a bit. And again, come to the transform and you can do whatever you want with it. So jiggle it a bit. Maybe drop it down so that it all lines up. And just basically mess it up a bit. So once you've got your two variations of text, you need to switch between them. To do that, click an empty space, shift spacebar and type dissolve. And then that'll bring a dissolve node in. You put one text into the yellow input and your other text into the green input. And now if we view this and scroll or step through our main text, you can see we start off with all the gubbins. So this. So bring your dissolve so that this text is visible. Set a keyframe. Step through. It's changed there. So go back one frame. Set a keyframe. Forward one frame. And go the other way. And now as you step through, your text changes. Finally, we're going to take the output of this dissolve, drop it onto our main flow, get rid of that merge because we don't need it anymore, and we can use this merge to turn this whole text on and off. So if you step back until the text disappears, which is at frame 14, come to your merge, go to blend, set a keyframe and drop it to 0. Forward one frame, set the blend to 1. And then forward until it disappears. So frame 18, keyframe at 1, frame 19, drop to 0. And now you've got all your elements in place. Very long-winded, but hopefully a fair bit of useful information in there for you. Apologies that it's been so long since I did a video. I've said, I think previously, I struggle a bit at the minute to come up with ideas. If there's anything you want tutorials on, let me know. Post in the comments. Come and find me on Discord. Pretty much all my recent tutorials have been driven through questions. If I don't get the questions, I struggle to find a subject to do tutorials on. So yeah, please leave comments. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit notification bell, and I will see you on the next one, which will hopefully not be too far away. Cheers!